the Bell. Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick alongside Katie Greifeld. We're counting you down to the closing bell, and here to help take us beyond the bell. It's a global simulcast with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec. Welcome to our audiences across our Bloomberg platforms on a Wednesday afternoon that's setting up, Carol, to be a fourth straight day of gains. And more importantly, the S&P, if you care about these milestones, looks like it is going to close at that 4,500 level for the first time since earlier this month.
Gives us something to talk about. Now, you know, sometimes traders, investors, right, like these round numbers or these benchmarks, if you will. But I think the idea that there's been 4 days of consecutive increases on the S&P 500 after an August that's been a tough one for the equity universe.
I mean, a tough one sort of until yesterday, I would say. You know, at one point, the S&P 500 was down as much as 5.5% on the month. And we were all kind of talking, okay, August is, you know, seasonally not a great month. September is the worst month seasonally. What's September going to look like? But now we're to the point, Katie, where, you know, for August, we're only down 1.5% on the S&P 500. And there's one more day to go.
One more day to go.
Wow,
yeah.
Tim, you got a lot of optimism there. Tim calling a 1.5% rally tomorrow.
Again, I mean, I know it is 4 straight days of gains.
I'm a glass is half full type of guy. What can I say?
Potentially 1.5% tomorrow. We'll see what happens. But again, you look at the dog days of summer. Trading volume has been so low. How much conviction you can put behind these moves, I really don't know. But as someone made the point to us, tomorrow is month end. Tim knows that very well. We're probably going to see that trading volume pick up.
Yeah, potentially see that pick up, of course, as we come back from the Labor Day holiday. Meanwhile, just a 1 day removed from the end of the month and, well, I guess a couple days removed from the end of the week. Stocks up for a fourth straight day, at least for the S&P and NASDAQ. The S&P 500 higher by 17 points or 0.4%. A close right now at about 45.15 as we wait for these numbers to settle here. That's a 4-day, 3% rally for the S&P. Unfortunately, Tim, that may not be enough to save it from its first monthly decline since February. Similar story for the NASDAQ, which is higher by 76 points or 0.5%. A close at that 14,000 level, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average moving higher a smidge by about 0.1%. The Russell 2000 trying to get in on the action as well, higher by about 8 points or 0.4%.
All right, back to the S&P 500 I go off of those closing numbers from Romaine. S&P 500, look at the mix, 317 names to the upside, 177 to the downside, and Katie, we had 9 names unchanged.
All right, let's take a look at some of these sector levels as well. The industry groups, you have more green than red. You take a look at what's leading. It's tech and tech hardware up by 1.6%. Consumer durables, those semis also getting in on the action. You go down to the bottom of the list. What did fall today? Banks at the bottom, off by 0.6%, Carol.
All right, so let's get to some of the individual gainers. A little bit trickier today, although there definitely were some standouts. I do want to mention Visa and MasterCard. Not even, do we want to go to Octo or do we want to
just keep going, Carol.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. Visa and MasterCard just up a little bit. Visa up about 0.4%. You had MasterCard up about 0.5%. We were all over this story. It was among the most read. Gaining after a report, first in the Wall Street Journal and then reported out by Bloomberg, the two planning to boost the fees that many retailers pay when accepting customers' credit and debit cards. These are always contentious. They get a lot of attention, and you do wonder whether ultimately this too gets passed on to consumers. But nonetheless, those names gaining a little bit. NVIDIA up about almost 1%, just shy of it. It is up about 20% since August 11th. The stock's biggest bull, Rosenblatt Securities' Hans Mosesmann, sees the market cap rivaling Apple. His price target implies a 2.7 trillion market value. And analysts have just keep increasing their target. Right now, they've risen to about 32% above NVIDIA's stock price. So increasingly bullish on that one. Just want to mention Lyft real quickly, up 8.5% in today's session. The director, Prashant Agarwal, reported an insider stock transaction to the SEC. Lyft, by the way, up 3% year to date versus about an 88% gain for Uber. So a little comparison there, Tim.
All right, you got the gainers, Carol. I got some of the decliners. I'll go through these very briefly. I know there's some earnings that we want to get to. HP Inc., ticker HPQ, falling today by 6.6%. The company cutting its profit outlook late yesterday after the market closed, acknowledging that a rebound in PC demand is not coming as quickly as hoped. And we've got to talk about Brown-Forman, the maker of Jack Daniels, Woodford Reserve, Finlandia Vodka, and more, falling 4% today, reporting earnings per share and sales for the first quarter that missed consensus estimates. Also, first quarter operating margin coming in below estimates as well. And here's an interesting one. Boat makers today taking a hit. This all due to results from Mastercraft. That company company reporting annual net sales and adjusted EBITDA forecasts that missed the consensus estimate. So as a result, you had companies like Brunswick Corp fall 4.6%. They make Bayliner, Quicksilver, Sea Ray, and more. Malibu, Marine Max, all falling as well.
All right, let's get to some of those earnings. Okta Crossing, as we said, and we're taking a look at third quarter adjusted EPS, some forecasts here, looking at 29 to 30 cents. That looks like a big beat. The estimate on the street is 20 cents. Third quarter revenue, they're looking at 558 to 560 million. That too, upside there. The street was looking for 551.9 million. And then if you look at fiscal year revenue overall, 2.21 billion to 2.22. They had seen 2.18 to 2.19. So this looks like some optimism, and you are seeing investors remain pour into it. It's up about 13% in the aftermarket. They do, mobile identification, if you will. It's an application software. It's only up about 7.5% this year, but man, it's getting a pump up, if you will, in the after hours.
Yeah, absolutely here. And we should point out we're going to get some other earnings, including we're expected to get Salesforce and CrowdStrike a little bit later. A quick check on what's going on with yields. Remember, for the most part, we came into this session with yields higher, but they ended the day modestly lower here on the day. You're looking at about 4.9 on the 2-year yield. Your 10-year yield basically still stuck at right around 4.11. Your 20-year unchanged. We had a 7-year auction earlier today that went, I guess, about as most people expected, Katie.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say with moves that small, you can pretty much say that's unchanged. Of course, it's going to be the bond market where I'm going to look when we start to get some of the big economic data releases we're expecting towards the end of this week, particularly at the front end. We've seen that Fed rate hike wagering for the rest of the year really come back, Tim.
Yeah. Can we?
Oh, yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead,
just I don't know how much you've been following this whole issue over Sculptor. We're going to get some headlines here. Remember, Sculptor has, I guess, pretty much repeatedly rebuffed Danok's demand for what he was looking for here. We're now learning that they've done another review here, and we've learned that this special committee has now responded and said that the latest proposal, in its words, doesn't constitute a, quote, superior proposal, and that it reaffirms its recommendation to go forward with that Rhythm deal. So a lot of drama, of course, going on with the former fund over there, and Sculptor basically deciding that it wants to move forward with that Rhythm deal. We do want to go back to earnings now. Salesforce earnings crossing the wire here. Your 2Q numbers on an adjusted basis, EPS coming in, well, at $2.12 a share. I'm not quite sure what that compares to just yet, but we'll try to get you that. On an operating income basis, $2.72 billion. That looks like a beat versus street estimates of $2.42 billion. Revenue overall rising about 11% in the quarter. The company also saying that for the full year, it's going to give a revenue guidance of $34.7 billion to $34.8 billion, which is roughly in line with what they had before. The previous range was 34.5 to 34.7. So overall, it looks like a beat for the second quarter numbers, and the guidance going forward for the full year and the third quarter, a smidge above what the street was looking for on average.
Yeah, I mean, this is a stock that's definitely been a standout, certainly here in 2023. It's up about 61% in the regular trade. We're seeing another bump higher of more than 4% in the aftermarket. Mark Benioff, chair and CEO of Salesforce, in the release saying our transformation drove our strong second quarter results, delivering revenue of $8.6 billion and record GAAP and non-GAAP operating margins. He goes on to say, based on our performance and what we see in the back half of the year, we are raising our fiscal year 24 revenue, operating margin, and operating cash flow growth guidance. And then talks a little bit more about his industry. Keep in mind, he also talks about leading our customers into the new AI era. This is important. They've been coming out, with a new suite of AI features. They did this in June. So, it's going to cost, I think, something like $7,200 a year. But we go to see how much this is maybe driving some of the numbers. And maybe this is why we're seeing this bump up in some of their forecasts.
Yeah, continuing on in the release, the company's president and CFO, Amy Weaver, is saying that they are accelerating our transformation and continue to drive strong shareholder growth, pointing out the company delivered 17.2% GAAP operating margin and 31.6% non-GAAP operating margin, Katie.
And you can see the enthusiasm in the after hours move. I do want to go to CrowdStrike as well. That company also out with their second quarter earnings, and it was pretty much in line with estimates. You can see that in the kind of muted price reaction here. Let's get specific. You look at second quarter revenue came in at $731.6 million. The estimate had been for $724.9 million. So again, pretty much in line. Second quarter adjusted EPS, that was a beat, 74 cents versus the estimate of 56 cents. But again, you look at that muted reaction going back and forth here, probably comes back to this outlook full year revenue seen between 3.3 billion to $3.04 billion. That is pretty much bang in line with what they had already expected, $3 billion to $3.04 billion.
All right, guys, let's also get to some other earnings because we do have Chewy. We all have our little pets at home, and Chewy coming out with its latest update, talking about fiscal year net sales of $11.15 billion to $11.35 billion. The forecast out there is $11.31 billion, and also talking about seeing fiscal year adjusted EBITDA margin about 3%. We are seeing Chewy up about 6%, 7% in the after hours. Third quarter net sales, $2.74 billion to $2.76. Estimate out there is $2.79 billion. And I'm just looking at what that stock's down 26% this year. So getting a little bit of love in the after hours. About 70% of the float is shorted. So we might be seeing some short covering as well if these numbers are coming in a little bit better than maybe forecast. All right, guys, that's a wrap. A lot of earnings. Tail end of the earnings season.
Yeah, but you know what? We're going to miss you guys tomorrow. We're not going to be here.
Yeah, you're going to tennis.
Yeah.
We're going to get
Tennis?
I think people, of course, should watch the close. But if you're interested in, a little bit of tennis, what's going on at the U.S. Open,
And you're taking off for that?
Tune into Bloomberg Radio.
We're actually working.
No, Romaine.
Oh, you're working.
This is
It's
work,
kind of
okay?
a way of feeling what the
Quote, working.
consumers
Someone's
up
got to do
Okay.
it, okay, Romaine?
Interesting.
So
Okay.
we will.
I was
take one
planning
for
to go to the
team.
U.S. Open. Can I come there and just heckle you guys from
You
behind?
can.
You could come on and
that
come
would
on.
be
You
great.
could actually come on with us. That would be a lot of fun. So you can stop by.
I'll
Maybe
be
next
there.
year you guys do the close from
Katie,
there as
you
well.
can come too.
Or maybe not.
I don't think so.
All right, that's a wrap, guys. So we will see you. I will see you in a little while. I'm going to take a little vacation, but
What?
what? But the team.
What's happening over there?
I'm gonna call it a big vacation, Carol. I'm gonna go ahead and change the definition.
Are
It's
we
a big
gonna-
vacation.
We're all doing our part for the economy with our time off.
Okay, stay in the U.S.
All right. I will. All right, guys, that's a wrap. We'll see y'all kind of ish tomorrow.